Good morning, Hubert Johnson here from Taxes Made Easy. Just wanted to go over a case. Just want to make sure my mic up. Today we're going to talk about a fun topic that affects many people and pretty much everybody that's a homeowner or if you have a commercial business. We're going to be talking about property taxes. So this sounds like a lot of fun, but it's a very real thing out there that's affecting people all across the country. So property tax issues, we're going to talk about states all across the country, how it's affecting them, how it's affecting individuals, and how people are trying to figure out how to contest it. And I had a question just the other day about property taxes, who is actually assessing it. So we're going to slow down and go over a lot of different issues and ways people are handling property taxes across the country. So thank you for watching here at Guardian Taxes Made Easy on the smartmoneyculture.tv, and we'll be back shortly. Good morning, America. Welcome back, everybody. So again, having a very interesting topic, a little different, property taxes. But before we get into that, I want to touch on some news for the day. Just got to have a couple articles from irs.gov. And I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen because these are important, but it kind of helps you to be able to see the screen as well. So this one is actually kind of a fun one. The IRS shares its Dirty Dozen. If anybody knows the old movie, The Dirty Dozen, if you haven't watched it, go watch the original. It's awesome. Has a lot of actors that you probably still recognize, and Donald Sutherland being probably the most famous today. But again, great movie. Anyway, so Dirty Dozen is talking about scams, and every year they publish this out. These are the latest scams that's happening. This is what the IRS is seeing, and again, this is a very helpful article. So again, there's a lot of helpful information on irs.gov. You just go, and I'm just going to show you how easy it is. irs.gov. If you just go to the IRS website, click on news, boom, it's right there. First article. IRS kicks off annual Dirty Dozen, came out yesterday, and we're also going to talk about this one that actually came out yesterday as well. But this is where I get a lot of the news from the IRS. It will probably bore most of you to tears, but it's good to know. And again, what's happening with the scams and how these are evolving. I mean, that's the thing is people are putting, that's one thing where I put things out there with a grain of salt. These scammers are going to get more and more sophisticated, and we're always playing defense. So the best way is to be aware, talk to your family members, especially if you have elderly family members, younger family members too. My son didn't want me to share this, but one of my sons got on Facebook, opened a new account. He was excited and accepted every single friend request possible. He first friended the friends that he knew, and then their friends, and then their friends. And he didn't even know that some of the friends he had clicked on were just straight up pornographic sites. So when I saw that he had friended someone and I clicked on it, oh, my son knows this person. Nope. So talk to your kids. And educate them as they grow up too. That's part of it. So not just the elderly, but younger. Well, a lot of these target younger people as well. So the two biggest things that they are seeing, and so you have this Dirty Dozen list. You read through these articles. Some of these are kind of your prior Dirty Dozen, different ways that people are getting targeted. I'm not going to go through it because it's just too much. But again, they target higher income people, average people, all over the place. Fish or smish. Every now and then. So this is whoever wrote this had a little fun with this. Don't take the bait. So what is phishing? This is becoming more and more common. Phishing an email sent by fraudsters claiming to come from the IRS. This happens all the time. People would call. It is so much easier for the fraudsters out there and the criminals out there to send mass emails. So if you get an email that doesn't smell right, that's why having an account at irs.gov, and I hope they do it soon, where they will have it, either green, everything's fine when you log in, or they'll have it, your account is red. There's an issue, you need to contact us. So you can see very quickly if there's any truth to what they're sharing. And ironically, there's usually a kernel of truth to it, but don't react, never respond directly to the email that's sent to you or the call. Call the IRS directly. Go to your irs.gov. Anybody that's demanding payment immediately, send me payment right now, is trying to rip you off. And again, I get a little passionate about this because I've seen it hurt real people, and drain people's retirement accounts, people's savings, and again, it's horrible. So again, any kind of email is phishing. Smishing is a new one. Texting or smartphone messages. So we all get this all the time. I want to share real quick with you. I just got one yesterday. So if you can see my phone here, you can't really see the message, but I'm going to read it to you. It says, an expense of $3.95 has been recorded on your account for Fast Track Express lanes. Complete payment, and here's the link to pay to avoid further fees. I haven't lived in California for 6 years, so I don't know where this is coming from, but to respond to this text that I got, it has a link. Should I click on that link? Absolutely not. So again, this is a perfect example of where they want me to make payment and put my information into this link. Could it be the Bay Area Fast Track? Yes. Are they that incompetent to try to bill me 6 years? And I didn't even live in the Bay Area, so I don't think I even had a Fast Track account. So I get it. It definitely smells like a scam. So if I'm going to contact them, I need to contact them directly. I'm not, even for a small payment of $3.95, I am not putting my credit card information into some link on my cell phone from a text. That is classic scamming. So your account has now been put on hold, and usual activity report, solutions link to restore the recipient's account, or unexpected tax refunds. They use all these different tactics. So email, but now the big one now is texting. So they call it smishing. But again, big problem here. Be aware. So phishing and smishing, new big things that I again want to talk about. So first, it's funny. I did not have that prepared. That I got a text this morning. And, they might appear from a legitimate sender or organization. They try to appear from a legitimate sender or an organization. So again, never always go to the source. So what to do? There's so many of them, it's hard. You can either email it to phishing@irs.gov. You can file with TIGTA and report fraud, FTC, Internet Crime Complaint Center. So there are ways to report it. Unfortunately, there's so many a lot of people just don't bother in reporting them. But talk to your family members, especially anybody that you have that's elderly, and just make sure they're aware that this is they need to be very careful. If they have questions, ask. If you have questions, what is this? Is this legitimate? Call a tax professional. Reach out to somebody, and I will give free advice all day long to people to help them avoid scams, hands down. And I'm sure there's plenty of other firms that would do the same thing. So again, this kind of goes through how to report this as fraud, and we're going to look at one more site. Again, an IRS site. It's Friday. We're going to have a little fun. This is a classic what not to do. So the IRS put out another, you have the Dirty Dozen, and then they also have criminal investigations. Hey, here's our yearly update, fourth anniversary. We have investigated nearly 9 billion in COVID fraud. So they're saying, okay, we gave out all this money. This 9 billion is a drop in the bucket. It really is. But it is something that happens. It is, again, with the numbers, when you look at them nationally, they're probably not that high. But these are people being investigated criminally. And the main thing is the IRS just doesn't have the capacity. The federal court system does not have the capacity. And they're very, very careful. So they have a 98.5% conviction rate for COVID fraud cases because they are very careful. They put together a full case. Doesn't mean you'll know or see them coming. So they have criminal investigators working. I went to last summer, I went to a conference where one of the investigators spoke and just shared his stories. And some of them are funny. One guy, they couldn't search his car or whatever. And so this guy, I don't remember what it was in an accident. His trunk popped open and the trunk was just full of all this evidence, all these fraudulent cards he had gotten from ripping people off. And the proof was right there. It's like, okay, plain sight, we can sit there and take all that. But again, it is something to be aware of. And if someone is ripping you off, I had someone this week, his dad was, parents. Unfortunately, sometimes family can be your worst enemy. And his father was sending him fraudulent W-2s for money he never made, but it was right at the limit where the father would get the maximum benefit for employing a son or a child. And so he filed, the individual was very frustrated because apparently his father had filed his tax returns for the previous couple of years and he wasn't getting any refunds. And it was messing him up because he was starting to work. And he was now on his tax returns, it was causing a lot of problems for his tax returns and he was trying to do it correctly. And he wasn't very happy with his father. I always give the advice, look, if you can maintain good relationships with your family, it's well worth doing that. But if you need to report your father for fraud to stop it, I would say first threaten it. And if he doesn't do it, but he said, look, he's been doing this. I want to report him. So I directed him on how to report him to the IRS and stop the fraudulent activity because it causes a lot of problems for him. I want to go through some of these cases. They're kind of funny. And so they can be funny. I was a prosecutor for a short stint, and made me laugh a lot of things that we covered. So we're going to come right back. We're heading out of the break and have a little fun this Friday, but then dive into property taxes, which there's going to be a lot there. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for watching live or on rebroadcast. Just want to go over a couple of these stories. You have the link here to see the actual article, the full article. I'm just going to go over the summary with you. So this guy was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He tried to get, was it $32 million in SBA loans fraudulently. He created multiple shell companies, etc. And he got 9.6 million from the SBA. So that's what he's ordered in restitution. He was trying to go after PPP, EIDL loans, etc. So there are people actively going after these that were pursuing these for fraudulent reasons. I had someone call me that had gotten an EIDL loan and invested the money and lost it. Never had a business, never qualified for the program. And they asked me, well, what should I do? I said, well, don't disclose that to anybody. Pay the money back. If you default, they're going to investigate, and then you could go down for fraud. It's like, you don't want that. Absolutely not. So there's a lot of people that did play funny games with EIDL, SBA, lately the ERC. If you are not sure that you legitimately access these programs, now's the time to come clean. Refund the money, especially with the ERC. They have a no fault. You can withdraw your application going on right now. Um, and so if you did apply and didn't get the funds, you can just withdraw your application. The money's not worth it in the end. Another Toledo man was ordered to pay $42 million. Again, this is a conspiracy. They had nonprofit, faith-based organizations. They're all fake, not real, and essentially was trying to rip the government off. So while the government is slow, and many people do rip them off, they do have active investigations going after the worst people. But there are plenty of times where people, like right now, they're auditing, sent out 125,000 audit letters on just the ERC alone. In my opinion, it never pays to get on the wrong side of the law. If it does, when you're always hiding stuff, you're always looking behind your back, and the stress alone is horrible. So we're going to switch gears a bit and focus on the topic of the day, which is property taxes. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about what are property taxes, who has to pay them, how do they get assessed, and how do you deal with this? So big caveat here. Here at Guardian Tax Law, we don't do property taxes. And I'll explain why. So someone called the other day and they said, look, the IRS is coming after me for property taxes. No, the IRS, the federal government, does not go after you for property taxes. And people get very confused because it is confusing. You have all these different layers of taxation. So the state doesn't do property taxes either. They will do an income tax, depending on your state, sales tax. They do, they tax liquor licenses, all kinds of business licenses. And businesses have to file and pay taxes to the state. But property tax is unique in that it's local by county or city. It's almost always the county. So what do property taxes support? Schools, parks, local community centers. They support the local city governments or county governments. And so again, here locally, I'm in a little area outside of Tucson. It's a nice suburban area called Rita Ranch, and right next to it is a city called Vail. Well, it's not a city. It should be a city. It has its own school districts. It has its own shopping area. I mean, it's off from the city of Tucson. It's outside of the city limits of Tucson. Now, people complain because the Tucson government focuses on the downtown area more. The roads are atrocious, etc. So people like to complain a lot. But the way to fix it is to incorporate. But the problem with incorporating is everybody's afraid that property taxes will go up. So again, when you have a city that gets incorporated, the city, you can manage it, you have more control, but then you have to have a mayor, you have to employ people to actually run and do all the functions of a city. The problem is the area is growing like crazy, like many suburban areas. You have plenty of kids, you have all kinds of kids. And as a youth coach, coaching soccer, baseball, currently I'm refereeing more than anything else. These kids have to travel for decent fields. There's no fields for these kids to play on. The practice fields are at the high school or other schools, and they're usually destroyed. I mean, just horrible fields. Because there's no parks and rec, there's no organization to support the youth in the community and make sure that there's community activities. I grew up in a small town that had a community center, and they had things all the time there. Nothing like that here. It all's run through the school district. So it's an excellent school district, don't get me wrong, but there's pros and cons to that. But the biggest problem is property taxes. So these are by cities, counties, and people are definitely against and have a lot of problem with property taxes going up. So why are property taxes going up across the country? It's not just a local issue, it's all over the country. No, I don't know what's with the light. I have a light shading right in my face. And it will adjust. My camera keeps adjusting. I need to do something about that. Anyway, you have, I lost my train of thought. So property taxes are based on the value of your home. So homes get reassessed every year by the county assessor or the city tax assessor. So they look at the fair market value of your home and they just do a general broad assessment and say, okay, we now think your home is worth so much based on the market. Now everybody knows the market is crazy right now. So it's going up, it's going down, it's all over the place. So but housing prices generally go up. And people like them to go up because it builds equity, it adds value, and when people sell, they like when they have more access to their higher property values. They're generally seen as a very positive thing. The flip side of it, higher property values, and especially how much property values have increased, means that all of a sudden you're paying a lot more in taxes. And it doesn't it happens generally because usually there's a limit to how much property taxes can increase. Some states like California passed Prop 13 back in the 70s when property taxes were shooting through the roof. But there's a bunch of states, well, states across the country are trying to figure out how to deal with these property tax issues. So that's where I want to focus most of our time and attention today. So let's start off with New York. So here's an article. So in New York, they have a huge problem here. And this is from Bloomberg News, where people, especially with commercial property, they've just stopped paying. They stopped paying their property taxes. Why would people just stop paying property taxes? Because New York, they were having so many foreclosures, so many people evicted out of their homes and property, they said, hey, we're going to be nice here, we're going to stop evictions. So again, for every action, there's a reaction. If you just say, hey, we're not going to evict people, guess what? There's no consequence for not paying property taxes, and people across the board stopped paying. Well, not across the board, but many people. The number it went to jumped by over 30% to $880 million in property taxes owed by the end of June. So what's the city supposed to do? Go seize the property, but they declared that they're not going to do that. So here it is. It's people realizing that there are no consequences for not paying your property taxes. And it's just killing the city. So you look at 2019, 2020, and then post-COVID, it's just jumped from the high of 21. Post-COVID, it's gone up another 200 million, and it's expected to go higher. So they stopped selling these tax liens to let people go in and foreclose on property. The idea is you want property to use for the best use of property. And so if someone can't afford property, it's a hard pill to swallow. There's a lot of different veins of thought. Everybody sympathizes with the little old lady that's been in their house for 30 plus years. But if they're redeveloping and building a huge shopping mall or something like that, it's all commercial development. And then you have the one little house surrounded by buildings. And it's happened. It's happened. The argument is that property is not being used for its most valuable use. But again, the option is to buy her out, pay her enough so that she'll move. And then that becomes a huge struggle between developers and individual property owners. So problem is, one of the biggest problems in New York is vacancy is shot through the roof, 25% in November, the highest on record. Rents are, you're having problems with rents, and so there's all kinds of issues here. And so they're trying to come up with an equitable solution so that people don't face foreclosure or eviction. But how do you do that? How do you get people to pay property taxes if they're not afraid of getting evicted? So it kind of goes into the weeds a little bit here. And the next article we're going to focus on is a different approach here in Nebraska. So Nebraska is having similar issues to New York City. You wouldn't think it, but again, property tax issues are going up across the country. This is something that's national, and it hurts people. When property taxes go up, people that are on fixed income, they'll literally get forced out of their homes. So here they're trying to come up with a balance. And the problem is your local municipalities, they like higher property taxes because it allows them to do stuff to keep areas functioning. But if they go up too high, the residents complain, and they sell, they move. So here, and again, this is a huge debate within the Nebraska House. How do you lower property taxes or reduce property taxes? And their answer is to raise the sales tax. So there's a couple proposals in here. One plan is to do a 1 cent increase on state sales tax. Doesn't sound like much, but again, always tax the normal things. So increase taxes on cigarettes, vaping products, hemp, because you increase taxes on cigarettes and things like this. People are addicted. They usually will pay the increased taxes. But businesses rely so much on these kinds of taxes that they become dependent on them. And again, the demand is fairly high for nicotine and marijuana products. Soda pop and candy, state lottery tickets, they love to tax the lottery. And this is an interesting one. Veterinary bills for pets. They can already be outrageous, doing veterinary bills for pets. Not to say it's not worth it, but people will pay a lot of money out of the pocket for their pets. So again, this riles a lot of people up, and it's the state taking over more of the funding for these school districts, for these local cities. They're saying it would generate $730 million more in revenue. But the problem is a lot of people are opposed to the bill, saying, look, this is going to hurt the cities. This is a huge shift of power from the local governments. You're stripping local control and giving it to the state. So they have another idea for an epic option consumption tax, getting rid of property taxes altogether, and then increasing the sales tax to 22%. Again, there's problems with that. All the neighboring countries or neighboring states are very close to it. You know what? Actually, there's a whole other article. If you click on that article, you can read some more in it. Again, it's always a tax increase. The question is, where is it? And the problem with sales taxes are considered very regressive, in that it hurts the poorest, the worst people that have to buy normal everyday items. And when you tax cigarettes, when you tax marijuana products, we tax a lot of those products, you're often hitting the poorest, the worst too. Again, it depends. The wealthier can afford that more if they do smoke. But typically, it's usually poorer people that smoke and consume those products. So, again, Nebraska having massive issues, and there's a lot of debate going by. There's no silver bullet. And here's the thing, there's no silver bullet. So how do you fix these issues? How do you avoid just property taxes going up and up and up? Well, an easy solution is to hold local spending in line. That's a tough thing to do because everybody wants to show, hey, we're doing something, hey, we're accomplishing something. Um, but you need good fiscal management, and most people, they want to tout their accomplishments. I did A, B, C, and D, and they always have people clamoring for more funds to do more things. Why can't we do this when we couldn't? Everybody has a dozen different ideas, and so there's a lot of voices that are talking directly to our local representatives, whereas the majority of us don't. A lot of us don't actually, don't talk to our representatives. I mean, we don't communicate with them. We don't. Um, we're not involved in local governments like we used to. So again, want to touch on another article, this time over in Boise, Idaho, and I might get to this after the break or just start to introduce it. So again, here we have another article, this one from State Line. It's a local newspaper. There's so many stories about property taxes and so many issues that this is why I wanted to address this today. Nice, beautiful suburban community. But again, you have in Boise property taxes going through the roof because home values are going through the roof. So typical home jumped from 2019 to 2024, 57% increase in home values over 4 years. So again, that's pretty crazy. And with that, the property taxes are going up. So people that bought in 2018, prior to 2019, they often paid very much less for their home. And then over time, as the values go up, they looked at it and it can drive people out of homes if it gets too high too fast. Now, Idaho, you wouldn't think this is a concern. In New Jersey, they have a lot more issues with property taxes. New Jersey is a very high tax state, and they rely a lot on property taxes. So again, they're trying to debate how to deliver property tax relief. They want to deliver 100 million. The question is, and again, this is where the debate comes. How do you deliver this relief without affecting local school districts and municipalities? So one of this article, this quote I think is great. In virtually every state where the legislature meets this year, property tax relief bills will be filed. So again, this is something that's happening across the country, and it's affecting people all throughout the state. So I'm out of time, and we will be back shortly. Hubert Johnson here. Again, thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy. We're focusing on property taxes today, and we're continue to look over this article regarding state taxes. Now, this article talks about Idaho in particular, but this is not just an issue for Idaho. It's being discussed in Montana, Wyoming, Colorado. We already talked about Nebraska. It's happening all across the country where this is an issue facing people. So if you are not happy with what's happening with your property taxes, get involved. Talk to your local representatives and see what's going on. And so one of the biggest concerns here is that they know their property taxes going up, but they're not seeing their services go up as their property taxes go up, and a lot of people just can't afford it. It's because home values got shot up 40%, they could be facing 40% higher property taxes, which is a lot. My own property taxes shot up about 40% this last year, which it's they start off fairly low, but it's when they increase year after year by that amount, that's when it gets really high, and it becomes very burdensome, especially on those on fixed income, lower income. So again, retired and lower income owners struggle the most to meet this. So what's the solution? Again, this is one way to help. Aidan Davis from the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. 29 states and the District of Columbia have tried to address this. They're called circuit breakers. So they cap property tax bills if they represent too large a share of the homeowner's income. So two properties right next to each other could have very different property taxes depending on who's living in the home. Now that also punishes people that have planned for the future. They have good investments, but sometimes life isn't fair. Sometimes life just happens and people don't have assets. One illness can wipe out most of somebody's savings. So this is something to absolutely get involved with your local government, see what's going on here. Kind of dovetailing back to the Idaho bill, you had the Idaho School Boards Association, so they would always have local elections for another bond, another fund, and part of this is to kind of control these costs. They got rid of the most popular election dates, so took away the school's opportunities to raise local levies and increase taxes locally. But again, they're taking the control away from the local school districts and the local areas, taking it to the state and supplementing that income from the state. But again, that when state income goes down, and generally, I'm not a fan of consolidation of power by the state. So again, this is Texas is doing a very similar thing, sending $7.1 billion to the school district to lower property taxes. Austin, Texas is one of the worst in the country. So again, this is happening all across the country, hurting a lot of people. So be very mindful of what's happening locally. And I'm telling you this, most people don't even know where the local government meets. They do have local meetings at the county. I've known people that actually got on school boards that this is for local involvement. The problem is that we move around with such a much more transient society today that we don't know who's in our local communities. We don't know who's making decisions on property taxes and other issues. Okay, so last article here, we've been talking about the personal side of things. This is from the Epic Times. This is about commercial real estate. People are like, oh, why would I care about commercial real estate? Now, to be fair, the Epic Times can be a little bit of a alarmist. But again, looking at Bloomberg, looking at Wall Street Journal, looking at some of these better known sites, we talked about BlackRock the other day. These are the people that you should be listening to and paying attention to when it talks about problems facing our economy. Again, when the Republicans are in power, they everything's supposedly all roses, according to them. But when the Democrats in power, everything's pure roses, according to them. Don't listen to the talking heads that support one side or the other. You're not going to get good information. So you have to take things with a grain of salt. And this is a very interesting article talking about the problems facing commercial real estate. So again, we talked about New York. People just weren't paying property taxes. They're talking about how this problem with people not paying property taxes and this increase in debt, especially for commercial property, can cause massive distortions and problems in our economy. So going all the way back to 2012, real debt being carried by commercial real estate. And then these are the prices. So the prices are dropping off. And that's the thing, we're not seeing a drop off in homes because there's more and more demand for homes. And part of that is we have more people in this country than ever. An estimated, just coming across the border, about an estimated 10 million more people last year. Not trying to argue whether or not immigration policy, but when you have many more people in the home or in the country, it's going to create more demand for housing because everybody has to stay somewhere. And it's going to put pressure on the market and drive people into more expensive homes. It's going to cause rental prices to increase, but we're not seeing the same thing for commercial property. Commercial property, especially since COVID, is having the opposite effect. Why do people want to commute? A lot of people were working remotely. A lot of businesses are figuring out how to be flexible, half time in the office, or just work a couple days in the office. So again, this is another phenomenon we're seeing across the country that we've been talking about. Pittsburgh, half of downtown has been vacant for 4 years. It's downtown San Francisco, they compared to looking like a zombie apocalypse downtown with abandoned buildings and everything boarded up. Their biggest shopping center on the wharf, I believe is 50% empty, and they've lost most of their major anchor tenants. So the big businesses that kind of bring in people and walk-in traffic that the smaller businesses thrive on. You lose the bigger tenants, things really dry up quickly. So again, with the lockdowns, now hybrid models, you're seeing a 30% reduction in office space. And the thing is, as the leases are coming up, a lot of these leases, people are pulling back. Restaurant retail sectors are closing, facing more closures. So there's a lot of pressure in the commercial market. So as most people are homeowners, why should we care? Because distortions in the market, and when you have a bubble in one part of the market, it affects others. And the problem is the market loves consistency. We have not had consistency. A lot of it, COVID, you had they panic hiked the interest rates to deal with the inflation coming out of COVID. Anytime you just dump a bunch of money into the economy, you create problems. So again, you get higher inflation. It just is. You print more money, the money's going to be worth less. You have trillions of commercial real estate underwater, and then affecting downtown areas. You have crime, inflation, remote work. There's an article out that don't mean to pick on California. It's just too easy. Oakland has the dubious distinction of being the first. Oakland, California, had the first In-N-Out just close up. In-N-Out, if you're not familiar with it, it's a Western thing. Started off in California, I believe. It is a burger joint where they pay more than the minimum wage. Minimum wage in California, that was gone so high that's probably is changing that. But typically, it's a place where the people there work hard. They get paid better. And everything's fresh. You have a very simple menu. It's extremely popular if you haven't heard about it. And as a result, it's hard so there's plenty of times I drive away from In-N-Out and I go elsewhere because they're just too busy. You lines around the building. It's a very, very popular place. And they had a very profitable restaurant in Oakland that shut down recently. So if it's making a profit, and a handy profit at that, why would the owners shut down a location? Crime, inner city crime. They're people waiting in the line for food, or waiting in their cars were getting carjacked. You had employees coming to work or leaving work, being held up and being robbed. It was just not safe for their staff. It wasn't safe for their clients. And they said, we're not going to put our staff through this. So people are making decisions based on what's happening in location. And again, when you have less control. It really hurts businesses all around. So why would you continue to support a business? That's just a small example of a much bigger problem. And then this article gets into the FDIC. We're guaranteeing 20 trillion in deposits through the FDIC for banks, with just 100 billion there in cash. That's roughly a half penny on every dollar. So when it's like every time there's a crisis, we just throw more money at it. And this article continues to go on about all of the banks that could fail. Most of them are smaller banks, smaller local banks where you actually get to know someone. We do our banking at a smaller local bank because we can actually talk to someone. We can actually communicate with them. The problem is these local banks are, again, they have a nice chart down here showing the orange is the increase in commercial real estate lending being handled by smaller banks. So when these crash, we talk about just I think it was last year we had some of the banks that were kind of on the edge failing, a lot of them in Silicon Valley in California. The author of this article believes that it's just starting. So again, there's a lot of issues out there. The economy, doesn't matter who's going to be president, has a lot to tackle and address here. So when you're looking at commercial real estate, if it starts wiping out our local banks and hurting people with deposits, people with money invested, it's going to cause a lot of issues. Bank crashes are not a good thing, but one of the points of the article is in 2008 when we had banks that were too big to fail. Instead of forcing them to learn from their mistakes and letting these banks fail, they were propped up by billions, if not trillions of US dollars that the American public, we didn't have. We borrowed all that money. And so some of the numbers right now as we're looking, and again, this gets back to the federal budget, but our spending is just insane. We're spending over $1.1 trillion just on interest alone. Just to give you an idea, looking back at 2023, we collected around, we spent a total of 6.1 trillion. If you want to look at receipts, and again, they're not even just looking at, you can normally just pull this up fairly quickly with any search. Total revenues in 22 were 4.9 trillion. So if we're bringing in about 4.9 trillion every year, so that's 5 trillion, and 20% of that's just spent on interest on the debt. It's estimated that for this year, 24, we're going to spend $1.7 trillion more than what we bring in. And one of the issues, it just gets to the point where it's not only can we not afford to pay our normal bills, but most of our money isn't going to infrastructure. It's not going to improve projects like the Francis Scott Key Bridge. And again, having a cargo ship hit it, not expected. That's not something that you can really plan for. But again, there's so many bubbles in the economy. There's so many issues out there that's why it's so important to diversify, to plan, protect your home, make sure that you know what's going on with property taxes, and otherwise people are going to get surprised and hurt. So again, if you have questions, what do we do with property taxes? Who should I contact? Again, give us a call, and especially if you have any scams, reach out to us at guardiantaxlaw.com or 520-485-7371. It's a little bit different today, talking about real property and what's happening overall for homeowners, but also commercial property. And I hope you will have a great weekend and get involved in local politics. It can really help save you a lot of money or help you know what's going on and what to expect.